Town Colony is so open because of the refugees came to move from.
We'll call the meeting to order at 5 p.m. Tuesday, May 30th, 2023. Welcome to the public hearing, public meeting of the City of Albany Planning Board, joined by my colleagues Mark Hall and Vanessa Yard, our capable staff and attorney. Thank you so much. I believe we have items that were shared on the agenda, but we had two items that we would like to put on the consent agenda that are meetings under our meeting agenda project number 00519 application for CUP number 0064997 Central Avenue, Rural America Builders LLC is one item to consider for consent. And the second is project number 00512, application DPR number 0164102 Hackett Boulevard. I entertain a motion from my colleagues to place this on the consent agenda. If that is in proper form, looking for guidance from council and see if we are in the clear. No routine. Oh, I guess so moved. Is there a second? All right. Do we have any public comment on these two items? All right, as you know, with our consent agenda, they've been deliberated and vetted by staff. Are there any questions from my colleagues on the board on either of these two projects before we put it up for a vote? All right, seeing none, all in favor of approving project number 00519 and project number 00512 on the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Projects are approved. Thank you very much. Back to the hearing agenda. We have application for ZMA number 0014, that's a zoning map amendment for 64 and 67 Colvin Avenue. The applicant is Councilmember Hyde Park of the 12th Ward. Good evening. This is mixed use community urban. The proposal is to amend the zoning map to change the zoning classification for 64 and 67 Colvin Avenue from mixed use community urban to mixed use neighborhood center. And our actions under consideration is that we recommend this to council. Right? Your turn to present.
Thank you. Councilmember Hyde Clark, thank you for considering this application this evening. So Colvin Avenue from Washington Ave going down to Central Avenue. For the majority, those businesses and properties are zoned MU and C. So that's mixed use neighborhood center. Go through the USDO, the purpose of the MUNC zoning district is to have a community oriented moderate density housing. And that's what you see when you go up and down Colvin Avenue. We have different apartment buildings, we have a blacksmith, we have a few restaurants, we have a gas station. And so when you go through that corridor, that MUNC district is prevailing. Prior to this being proposed, the former Armory Garage site, which was considered all 64 Colvin Avenue, was zoned MUCU. And if you look at, prior to that lot being subdivided, we had a continuous lot that ran all the way to Central Avenue. And so once that subdivision was proposed, we broke off those lots from having that connectivity to Central Avenue. And when I was looking at it from a planning perspective and discussing it with neighbors, we just felt that in development, whether we have a potential development at that site at 64, what is 64 Colvin Avenue, now owned by Vecino for residential housing. And so when considering at 60 Colvin Avenue, we have a mixed use affordable housing project that has previously been approved by the planning board. That's for 64 units. That's under the MUNC zoning district. And so prior to an application being submitted by the Vecino Group, the neighborhood felt that in order for that corridor to be properly developed, that a common zoning district with common density regulations, common goals would be appropriate. At 67 Colvin Avenue, that is a vacant lot. I did include that because for similar purposes, instead of looking at the park entrance as a barrier between upper Colvin Avenue going towards second corridor, we felt that that property, similar to 64 Colvin Avenue, would be more properly zoned MUNC. It does not prohibit the anticipated application that we have, but there are density requirements that will be different, namely the allowable number of stories for a building does drop down to 3, with an allowable bonus up to 4, depending on what district you're adjacent to. So that is the proposal. Again, it's what is in purple, which would make it on the screen here, which would make it consistent with the rest of Colvin Avenue.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from planning board members? Any questions? Any questions that folks signed up for today? Comments?
There are, we had one written comment by Carol Carmen that's added to the record, and we have Andy Brick here who'd like to speak.
Good. Let's listen to this presentation, and then I think there's a dialogue that we would like to hear from staff on this. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Andy Brick from the Brick Law Firm. On behalf of Albany Realty Partners, who is, we believe, a neighbor to this proposed rezone, my clients own the existing Armory building and the vacant lot up to Central Avenue. At some point, while the proposed ordinance that you have was being drafted, a subdivision was approved and filed, which carved out what you see as a kind of hook in the back in purple, which is now owned by the Vecino Group. My client owns everything west of Colvin that is in green. And it's our understanding that our property is not proposed to be part of this rezone. But the original ordinance, as it's drafted, if you'll see, specifically says that the rezone encompasses 64 Colvin Avenue, which is a 7-acre parcel. It is no longer a 7-acre parcel. The Vecino Group owns 3.66 in the back, and the remainder, which included the building, was connected to the corner lot. So the building itself is now 944 Central Avenue, which is a 5-acre lot. And we just wanted to confirm that the proposed rezone does not impact our properties and is limited to the 3.66 acres that the Vecino Group acquired. And if that's the case, we would ask that the zoning ordinance be amended to reflect the 3.66 acres rather than the 7 acres that it currently states in the draft form. And we would also like to address both this proposed map amendment as well as the proposed text amendment, which I believe Councilman Clark will present next. We have no objection to either, but we would like for our project, which is currently under review by you for development review for the building, as part of that, the seeker review that you are in the middle of, which incorporates the Vecino project as well as our proposed projects at the corner. We would like to point out that this rezone does not have any impact upon that ongoing seeker review. because when you analyze the proposed zone that it's going to change to, which is the MUNC, all of the thresholds incorporated in that zoning district are less than what's currently being analyzed by you for our full build project for the entire property. So as a result of that, we don't believe that this rezone process, regardless of your recommendation or the city council's final determination, should have any impact upon our ongoing seeker review. It was our understanding we were going to be on this agenda for a seeker determination for the full build of the project, including Vecino, but you didn't have the traffic report, which it's my understanding you now have. So irrespective of this rezone, we would ask that our process continue and we be placed upon the next agenda for a secret determination. And again, we don't have any specific position on the rezone itself, other than the fact that it shouldn't impact our secret review, and that it just be confirmed that it's for the 3.66 acre parcel. And I thank you for the opportunity to present. And these comments would also apply to the text amendment that's being proposed as well. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Staff?
Yes.
We have here just pulled up is few maps just to give a visualization of what's proposed and also what alternative proposal the planning staff has put together. So we see here we have Colvin Avenue coming right through here. Everything we're seeing here, these are the city parcels under the existing zoning map. Everything here in this lighter color is zoned under the MUCU, with it ending here, with the MUNC ending at Anthony Street. What is currently before us, the amendment by Councilman Clark, is for the MUNC to, go on the other side. This parcel, 64 Colvin, which, as Andy was just indicating, has been split. So currently there's no parcel boundary line right here. This is 944 Central, and this goes all the way through. So this is one parcel now. So this is the proposed amendment before us, where it would change these areas from the MUCU to the MUNC. And what we are proposing as an alternative to that would be to extend the MUNC further down on the eastern side of Colvin. There are a lot of the buildings here are pulled up closer to the street. They're more in line with uses and the type of scale of development that one would typically want to see on a corridor like this, that better aligns with the original intent of the corridor here along Colvin from Washington to Anthony. So we believe that adding these other parcels to the MUNC and taking them out of the MUCU would benefit the long-term development patterns. And then additionally, we are recommending that the parcel here, which is really a portion of 944 Central, and would eventually become, was proposed to become 66 Colvin Avenue, would also be included in the MUNC. And then in addition to this, you'll notice there's no MUCU anymore. So what we're proposing is to completely dissolve the MUCU, and to better align this corridor, we're proposing expanding the MUNC further down. And then for the properties that are either on the corner of Central and Colvin, we have right here, And over here, this one right here is a oil change, quick service and parking lot. That these be part of the MUCH, mixed use community highway, as they're more in line with the auto oriented components of the Central Ave district itself. So our proposal would be making these parcels right here, these 3 parcels, from MUCU to MUCH under the community highway. And then expanding this more pedestrian scale, neighborhood scale development along the rest of Colvin until it hits what would be the MUCH. Took a look at the existing uses, setbacks and other elements here. The MUCU is pretty similar to the MUNC in a lot of ways. There are a few differences. Very few of them would impact the businesses that are currently along here. The building at currently 944 Central, it would be legally non-conforming as is, so it wouldn't have to change in terms of setbacks or anything like that. Any future development, though, the idea is that, it would be anything along this area here would be consistent with the MUNC as opposed to the MUCH, which is more which allows for more intensive uses and auto-oriented uses. Any questions on the difference in the proposals?
So then, in making this change, how will that affect the development plans already put in place for that parcel?
For this
I
one
think
right
I've heard of, yeah,
So
because it doesn't seem like it affects the parcel that's now in the blue, in the darker blue.
over here.
Yeah, but it seems like there may be definitely some changes and change now to the purple. I'm visual, so I'm going by what I
Yep.
see.
Yeah, so a lot of the criteria that was evaluated for this specific proposal, it's called 66 Colvin, but part of the 944 Central, because it's already an existing building, it doesn't need to meet its grandfathered for a lot of the setbacks or building dimensions. There's a lot of provisions in the code that it's exempt from having to comply with now, but there are other provisions, design, streetscape, things like that, that it does have to comply with. That wouldn't change regardless of what district it's in.
Yeah, but
between
we've looked at how they wanted to develop that area.
this parcel right here.
So it's just that parcel, not the back.
Well, so there's a current application that's not this one right here, but
Right.
before us first, it's being called 66 Colvin, which is this parcel, this building right here, which currently exists. We don't have an application for it, but there's seemingly going to a proposal for fast food or quick service
Yes.
restaurant right here. This,
But wasn't that
the
supposed to be
MUs
further up towards Central Avenue? Correct me if I'm wrong. We saw a proposal where there was that whole lot being divided into 3 different sections. One section is supposed to be fast food, another section is supposed to be housing with some affordable housing provisions in there, and I can't remember the third piece.
yep, so
Yeah,
self-storage.
self-storage. So that's my question. Now that we're looking at, we're taking, that whole section was now under one, whatchamacallit, zone.
Mhm.
Now we're breaking that zone up into 2 different zones, which are, one is less restrictive, one is more restrictive. So how does that affect that application, knowing of those 3 things that were supposed to be on this land?
Yep, so for any potential uses here, so, and this is where the quick serve was supposed to be. This would be allow for more intensive uses, but it also allows for greater setbacks, so it's not requiring businesses to be pulled up to the street front like you would see in the NC as proposed or the MUC as currently is. And that's consistent with the other properties you typically see along Central Ave over here, where they're generally larger or wider frontages, and the buildings are typically set back farther from the street. So it would actually give more flexibility to
those
know,
in the
to
dark
this
blue.
potential
So those
project here.
buildings that are going to be built or developed in the purple, how does that affect?
Yep.
Those applications?
So for this one here, there largely be no change as the building's not, there's no proposal to move the building or anything like that. It's not required.
But that would be
so-
for the self-storage, correct?
Yeah, yep.
Okay,
which
so
is-
what about the apartment building?
So the difference between the CU and NC would be the requirements on height.
Okay,
And then there's also requirements in terms, that's part of the next proposal we'll get to, but provisions on the maximum number of dwelling units.
and so if I remember the other proposal correctly, they were seeking to have 6 stories. Or something around there, 5 or 6.
I believe it was 5 stories.
Okay, and so now with the new one, it's going down to what, 3?
They haven't submitted anything to confirm that. I believe the intent is that they.
No, I'm talking about for the zone. You said it would be a
Oh,
restriction
it's,
on height.
I believe 3.5 is the.
3.5,
max.
okay. Okay,
3.5, they could seek a bonus floor for a certain provision of affordable housing, which they would be doing, so technically it'd be more like 4
so they'll
stories.
be just getting rid of 1 story.
Correct.
Okay,
To our knowledge, they're planning to adapt the proposal to be suitable to that.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily foresee a conflict.
okay. No, I just wanna see, like, confirm, because I knew them being new applicants, they wouldn't be grandfathered because the building isn't existing. So they would definitely have to adapt, and which was going to my question is, are they willing to make that change? But Brad answered that. It seems as though they're willing to make that change. And I guess my next question is more historical, is because just, again, I'm visual. So looking at everything, you have the park, what's in the MUNC, and then now the what's in the blue, which I can't.
MUCH.
MUCH. How did that one parcel be carved out to be MUCU? And you may not have the answer, it may be a common council question, but sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
Referring to.
Yeah.
To this right here.
Yeah, because everything surrounding it,
I think the idea was that I don't know exactly, but I think the
Right.
idea was that this whole thing would be carved out as a corridor and put under MUCU with the intent that this property here where the old garage was potentially be torn down and there would be this larger open, vacant land area that could be utilized under something that would be compliant with the MUCU. When the applicant here for the self-storage applied for a substitution, which was granted by the BZA, so they allowed I'm forgetting how many, there's a number of other prior legal non-conforming uses at this site, and the applicant applied to substitute those uses for just one use that they showed to be less intensive, which was the self-storage. So this building's remaining. I think the idea was that by potentially rezoning it all as like one large block, it would maybe make incentivize someone to come in and do a larger project along the whole corridor.
It also
but now
seems-
we're taking that away. Okay,
Well, this is still here.
only part
it's
of it
not-
though, but not all of it. And if you go back to the other slide. Is now sort of blocking some of that off, not a lot. But it looks like you're just carving it out just for that building.
You're referring to this over here or this
Uh-huh.
on? Yeah, so the idea here would be that you're now continuing the more neighborhood scale zoning district and its allowances and standards along Colvin until you get to the properties that are essentially at the corner
Facing
of Central and Colvin, which is more auto oriented.
It seems like you're trying to do this.
Right, right, but it's just weird,
So if you look, along
yeah.
the other areas, you don't typically have the
That type
carve
of
outs
breakup.
until, yeah, so typically anything along Central is gonna be within that, just within
And
the
that's why
MUCH here.
it's kind of weird to me, you don't have a lot of that parcel breakup in that way. Everything is more, it's an easier way to make sense out of it. Okay.
Why,
But it would recommend changing it to this.
Yeah, I know.
by parcel breakup, what do you mean? Because to me, it makes sense because it.
No,
kind
it
of
does make
starts with
sense.
That idea of what we're gonna do with Cole.
It does make sense, but it's clear that they're carving out that structure to keep it under the other one.
You say that structure, you're referring to
Yes,
this?
yes.
Yeah, I mean, the idea here is also that this is really fronting and
Yeah.
predominantly
Avenue.
on Colvin itself.
Yeah,
So, you don't know what's gonna happen, but maybe down the line, this, if there were proposals to change the use here or something, in terms of a project, you'd want it to align ideally with something that's gonna be complementary to this neighborhood scale district as opposed to the more intensive highway district, yeah.
I get it. Thank you.
Martin, something to add?
No, I think that was comprehensive.
Plenty to break their heads. And seated and look back to the gallery, so, I think for us at this juncture, what we are asked to do as a planning board is make a recommendation. I'm asking, before I go, staff, is there anything else that we want to go through on this?
I think we pretty much went through it, but essentially just to summarize what we have here is a very, very short summary of everything is you have two different development type patterns that are converging at this area. And what we're attempting to resolve is kind of finding the best way to address both the neighborhood scale area and then the more intensive auto centric area. Just making sure I'm not missing anything here. Yeah, I mean, just to summarize, essentially what we're requesting would be, or proposing would be having 64, 67, 75, 91, 93, and 105 Colvin, and a portion of the 944 Central, that's the former Armory Garage, go from the MUCU to the MUNC, and then by dissolving the MUCU, you'd expand the MUCH to encompass 111 Colvin Avenue, 924 Central Avenue, and then the other portion of 944 Central that's fronting Central Ave itself.
So planning board members, what we have is before us is the adoption of the recommended actions from our staff. And I want to see if there is a motion to advance that. It's been moved by Martin Hall, seconded by Melissa Gilliard to adopt the recommended actions for the zoning map amendment for 64 and 67 Colvin Avenue. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, passes. Now we go to the zoning text amendment 0016.
The second amendment really came when I was looking at the purpose of that zoning district and looking at the dimensional table that's in the USDO. And if you read the purpose of the MUNC district is to provide for moderate density housing options amongst a nexus of locally oriented neighborhood scale commercial uses, providing support services to the surrounding residential neighborhoods. And so taking that into mind as to what the purpose of that is, when you go to the actual development standards table, and you go to the maximum dwelling units that are permitted, for the MUNC district, it says not applicable, and that carries through from MUNC, MUCU, MUCH, MUTT, MUCI. And I really feel that that conflicts with the intent of the zoning district that's in the USDO. And so the proposal with you today is really just what is currently in the USDO for the MUNE zoning district, which is mixed use neighborhood edge, which is similar in intent and goals in terms of zoning districts. And also matches the RM, which I think is residential medium density. And so it's not a number I pulled out of the hat, it just matches what we have as a standard for our zoning district. So from my perspective, certainly interested to hear staff comments and feedback on what that number should be. I just don't think it should be not applicable. I think that doesn't line up with the intent.
Do we have any questions on the zoning text amendment from planning board members? Any check-ins? Go ahead, sorry, Martin.
No problem. I just thought of something. I am a little bit, I just wonder where the 750 came from in the beginning, and also the impact of lowering that, or I'm sorry, of keeping it the way it is, and not allowing smaller units, but have a tendency to drive up the cost of housing, the units in that district. There's going to have a larger number of smaller units. And sometimes, so I'm just kind of curious as to how we decided that 750 was the number, because to me that's a little on the large side for an average size or a minimum size. My house is only 1250 or something like that. So.
Okay. I think I get it.
Yeah.
Any responses from staff or the applicant? I don't know if that was a question or a comment. Just
Yeah, I guess let's comment.
I don't, I'm not sure exactly how the number was originally arrived at, but we'll attempt to kind of get at with our recommendations. Probably somewhere close to how that number was derived at, I imagine.
all right, staff. Do we have anybody that has signed up to speak on this?
No.
Good.
Oops.
Staff.
Bear with me one sec. So as part of our analysis, we took a look at the various districts within the city that are currently zoned MUNC. And so that's what you're looking at right here. So there's 22 different areas within the city that are, or clusters that are under the MUNC zoning district. And then what we did was also looking at the individual parcels within those districts. Yes, as an example here, took a look at properties that were solely identified as standalone apartment buildings. So they're able to pull that because they have a property class code of 411 from the assigned by the assessor. So looking at 44 different, 44 is the total number of apartment buildings within the MUNC district. We want to see how this proposal would impact the units that currently exist. We looked at that 17 which would be 39% of the 44 apartment buildings would become legally non-conforming as they don't meet the 1 per 750 threshold. When looking at the different properties, those 17 essentially that fell outside of it, if the gross floor area were to be lowered to 600 square feet, then there would only be 4 apartment buildings out of the 44 that would be legally non-conforming. So we think lowering it to 600 is more appropriate. So you don't have a larger percentage of properties that we're now placing into a status of legal non-conformity. Additionally, while the MUNC and the MUNE are very similar, there are differences. The MUNC is a denser, slightly more intensive zoning district than MUNE. Good example of that is that the MUNE district it allows for detached single, 2-family and 3-family homes, where the MUNC does not. So kind of by nature in its uses, it's a little bit more intensive and the density is higher. So I think, it stands to reason that we do agree that there should be a cap, a standard placed on this, especially if we're saying under the purpose of the zoning district that it should be, moderate density housing options. But that 600 square feet would be more appropriate given the fact that it is more intensive. It is typically not directly adjacent all the time or as much as the MUNE is to less dense residential zoning districts, and that by lowering this number, you wouldn't be putting as many currently existing properties in a state of legal nonconformity. So again, and just to reiterate, if the effect of either proposal would impact parcels in all of the MUNC and not just the ones along Colvin. Some examples for show everyone. Again, this is the MUNC, and these are the MUNE zoning districts. So typically located pretty close to each other, but there is a difference in terms of intensity and some of the other requirements and standards.
Question, any question for staff? I have one small one.
Okay.
What happens to the 4?
That was to the 4th.
Yeah, if it goes through exactly as you outlined, what happens to the 4?
They'd be allowed to remain as is. They wouldn't be prevented from continuing to operate that way. If the use were to be discontinued at some point for a year or longer, if someone were to try to reestablish it, would have to go through a more lengthy process to either determine if it could be reestablished, and such. But some of the 4 were quite substantially lower. I believe one of them was like 400 was the number, the gross floor area that it would average out to, and some of the others were just under the number, just under 600.
So just to be clear, it's the use, not the owner. So if ownership changed hands, but they plan to do the same thing, then it's still.
It would continue.
Okay. All right. Very good. Review the recommended actions, please.
Just a recap of the staff notes. Recommended action, the amend table 375.401.2, which is the dimensional standards for the mixed use district, to change the dwelling units maximum from NA currently to 1 per 600 square feet of gross floor area within the MUNC.
Thank you. Planning board members, we've reviewed the recommendations of the text we have in action from the staff before us. Do we have a motion to affirm this recommended action? It's been moved by Ms. Gilliard, seconded by McCall to advance the recommended action from the staff. All in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carried. Correct me if I'm wrong, but for the zoning map amendment and the zoning text amendment, the board has just affirmed the recommendations of the staff. We will now pass them on to the council for their review and ultimate disposition, correct?
Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilman, for your leadership.
Have a good night. Yeah.
Next up, back into our meeting agenda, we have development plan review for project number 00524, 48 Corporate Circle, 41 Corner Road. Applicant Roach Madison, management, did I get that correct? Absolutely. Representing Adrian Hirschberg and Hirschberg, looking for to allow the construction of a 93,000 plus or minus square foot building. We do not have any actions under consideration tonight. It's our first time, but let's listen.
Thank you. So my name is Bill McCready with Hirschberg and Hirschberg. As stated, the proposal is a spec building for warehouse storage. The tenant hasn't been decided yet. That's kind of why the site plan was developed with a lot of bank parking. There's one area I just want to point out in that first slide. We're proposing 73 parking spaces to actually be constructed. Can you put it back to the first slide? And we're having 114 banks parking spaces, not 11. And 93 are required by code based on the size of the building. So I just wanted to point that out as a typographical error, that 11 should have been 114 bank parking spaces. It's in the industrial one zone, which is the proposed uses will be conforming. The tenant, like I said, hasn't been decided as of yet. The existing parcel lies currently between 52 Corporate Circle and a project that was recently approved, 42 Corporate, which is on the right-hand side. So making their parking lot part to a building. So as you stated, the parcel is 8.34 acres and currently vacant. The site plan is proposed to have 2 entrances. On the right side would have mostly, employees and office areas or whatever it is would be parking on the right side. The loading docks would be to the left, which is southwest. And there are 2 entrances, like I said, circulation around the building completely. Currently, we're proposing a 40 or a 38-foot high 1-story high bay building. We are requesting some waivers. One of the waivers is for the access on both of the entrance drives. Because there's going to be warehouses, there's the tractor trailer traffic, we need excessively wide curb cut for the vehicles to maneuver in and out. That's one of the waivers. The second waiver would be the width of the parking, the driving lane adjacent to the parking. We're requesting a waiver to 24 feet, or I'm sorry, to increase it to 26 feet because in reviewing with state code and fire services, they prefer to have that access aisle continually around the building. The last waiver we're requesting is for planting along the front. Because of those excessively wide driving lanes, we can't physically put plants along there and maintain that a healthy spacing for the growth of the trees. On our landscaping plan, which, you know, will be reviewed internally by, you know, planning staff, the front, any frontage would be screened, the parking in the front, which is a north or southeast side would be screened, where we have a transformer and potential monument sign. To the southwest, we're screening the adjoining property, and also adding vegetation along Carn Road to screen from that side. Next slide basically shows the building. The bottom is where the parking would be. The top of the page is where the loading docks would be. It's not subdivided out yet because we're not sure what tenants are going to occupy. And then here's our graph of the building elevations. Top elevation, which is the southwest, shows where the loading docks would look like. The next on the northeast elevation would be the side from the Carter Road. The southeast elevation, right below that, would be the elevation on Corporate Circle. And then the bottom elevation is the side of the where the parking would be main doorways for the tenants. With that, I'll open up questions.
Thank you very much. My colleagues, do you have any questions?
Yes, just one.
Okay.
On the waiver for the trees, are you proposing that the trees would have a different spacing than we require, or just no trees at all?
We'll have nine street trees.
Okay.
14 required. So in order to keep healthy spacing and the distance between the two accesses and a wider access, we're requesting that way.
Okay.
But there will be 9 street trees.
Any questions on this one?
Nobody signed up.
Nobody signed up to speak? Some more property for him for something else. Staff?
Just the comments that were provided, this is a secret unlisted action. We'll look to take action on this for the next meeting. We have received recommendations from the planning board, Albany County. Albany Pine Bush Preserve Commission has provided some recommendations and is in approval of the overall project. Gilderland, Tom Gilderland has been, the project has been referred to them because they're the neighboring municipality. We're working through the departmental comments, and we provided the applicant with our review of the project.
Absolutely.
There will be a lot modification that will be required for 48 Corporate Circle and 41 Parma Road.
Thank you. All right, there again, this is the first appearance and no recommended action, but thank you for presenting. We'll see you possibly on the next agenda or sometime in the near future to look and make all the further determinations. And thank you very much for participating. Next is development review number 0137 and development plan review 0172 500 Northern Boulevard, Northgate Landing LLC. representing agents. Is that great?
We also have Conifer here, the developer, Honor.
So we're looking at in the zoning districts of mixed use, community highway. The proposal will allow for the construction of 2 4-story apartment buildings totaling 233,864 plus or minus square feet to accommodate 184 dwelling units. If you start your presentation.
Okay,
Before we jump off and just jump in, I just want to just do a brief introduction. Lance Warner from the state of Conifer Realty.
You should grab a chair and come sit at the table and introduce yourself.
Oh, sure. Let me, sorry, Omar Hermanstein with Conifer Realty. I was just sort of thinking back here because, you know, I just wanted to make sure the design professionals got to make their presentations. But as far as initial introductions, I'll just introduce myself and go back around it and just give a general introduction of the project. So, Phil.
yeah, Phil Kozel, the Burge Group, civil engineer for the project.
Rich Linder from SWBR, architect and landscape architect for the project.
And we also have our transportation engineer here as well.
I get in the back. Ken Worsta, Great Median Engineering Traffic Consultant.
So just in terms of a brief introduction to the project, I mean, you all are,
One second.
sorry.
Sorry, I did not announce this at the beginning, go through the ground rules, but generally for presentations that are new in nature, I believe we have 10-minute. And then we have comments after. If we hit our 10-minute limit, we can make an assessment at that point, but we try to move the meeting along. So
Okay, so,
your 10 minutes have started now,
okay.
after the introduction.
So, okay, so great. So we'll jump right in. Phil, I'll let you take the lead there.
So next slide, I'm trying to follow your format. It's an MUCH zone. This is a permitted use in the zone. Next slide. Move right on, next slide. The existing buildings will be demolished and the site rehabilitated in its entirety. Buildings are now 67 years old, and there really is no way to save those with our current proposal of 184 affordable apartments split between 2 buildings. And next slide, please. This is representation of the proposed site and what really the reason why we can't save any of the existing development, which we don't want to do anything with. Next slide. Here's some existing photos of the area. That's the existing hotel. It's only fenced in. You can see some of the development there. So next slide. Am I moving too fast? Sorry.
No. When you showed the picture, I heard 500 North Boulevard. But when you showed the picture,
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, Northern Boulevard, it's right there. Dunkin' Donuts is right there. Channel 10 is across the street. Yeah, so. Yeah, it's just existing conditions. Again, this is the showing existing conditions, the hotel or the motels, the 2 larger buildings, and there's 2 smaller 2-story structures in the back that will also be demolished. Existing pavement will be removed. The 2 entrances off of Northern Boulevard will be closed with new granite curbing. The sidewalk will be extended through those areas with the improvements, and we'll have a central entrance into the courtyard of the proposed development. The next slide is the landscape. But again, this is the proposed site plan with a central drive into the project. Some of our improvements here, you'll see, or you kind of see a lot going on there. Central access is 26 foot wide. That's required by code for fire access, and also we did some turning movements to see if we could get it. it's not possible, so that 26-foot is actually going to be one of our exception, waivers we're going to request. 5-foot sidewalks all around the interior, and the existing 5-foot concrete walk along the frontage will be maintained and extended through our entrance. 6-inch curbs all over the project, granite curbing within the right of way, concrete curbing inside the project, with curb openings to allow for storm drainage into fire retention facilities inside the parking islands. We are proposing to continue a similar use of fencing around the rear yard and side yards. And then utilities, we have site lighting within the courtyard, 18-foot high LEDs powered by solar power with backup power supply. Existing lighting on Northern Boulevard will remain. This provides that lighting coverage. Our domestic water will be proposed as a tap to the 12-inch main on the northern side of Northern Boulevard. The site is served by a sanitary sewer, existing sanitary sewer that serves the motel in the lower corner of the site, which is the southeast corner of the site. Our design flows are well under the capacity of that sewer. It will require some clean out and some maintenance there for us to use, totally for our benefit. Stormwater flows off of the site, existing in 3 different directions: the southwest, southeast, and the northwest. The northwest corner is the flow goes to the city storm system in Northern Boulevard. Our proposed stormwater management will limit peak flows to pre-development levels in all those off-site flow areas or design points, if you will, and we'll be providing water quality treatment for those. The site may access the gas service, which is right in front of us, or I think primarily powering small emergency standby generators, which will be screened. And electrical service has been confirmed to be adequate for the anticipated loads. Jump to another slide, perhaps. Landscaping, pretty intensive landscaping in the interior parking islands for fire retention is the surrounding site. Will be adding more landscaping. Playground areas to the left of this exhibit up in the corner. You'll see.
And we can go to the next slide too. That'll show the compliance.
Yeah, so this just demonstrates the compliance with the city code as far as required landscaping or recreational area landscaping, bicycle parking. We have more than enough bicycle parking, which is going to be all provided inside the building.
Next slide.
This is a currently in design is the site signage, which will be, as you can see, the dimensions pretty much in code compliance, and then kind of a rendering, which is this project, but similar. Get into the next project. And
yes,
Rich, do you want to talk about the elevations and the floor plans and things?
next few slides will be elevations and floor plans. Rich can start talking about colors.
So the siding is vinyl. I have the 3 actual colors right here. The gray, the blue. So that
We go to the next slide.
you guys see a few different slides with different views of the buildings. There's 2 buildings.
Next slide.
So there's white trim, white windows. The gray siding is color is at the bottom. And that's the blue. So
Then we go to the first floor.
So we have 4 stories. Each floor has a stairway at each end and an additional one at the center near the elevators. There's a center entry that you can see right next to the elevators on the light extending down away from Northern Boulevard that has a canopy. Offices are in that same general area as well as the mailboxes, fitness area, community room. Trash room, that kind of thing. And the inside of the corner, the building bends is where all the utilities come in. So it's, you can go to the next slide. As you go up, you'll see some of those items go away as you go up. On this floor, you're seeing the top of the community room because it's a two-story space. But otherwise, we're starting to see units fill in where the offices were. If you go up, you'll see it's all units now, with the exception of the main utilities, like at the corner and the janitor closet.
So by and large, floors 2 through 4 are repeating floors, just so everyone's aware. And in the second building, with the exception of the major amenities such as the property manager's room and some of the major amenity spaces are not repeating the second building, just so everyone's aware of that. Next slide over, we're talking about some of the sources of this project. So this project is expected to be a 4% project that will be getting sources from the home funds from State of Albany, 4% local housing tax credit bonds, and some other state sources are expected to get through New York HCR. Next slide. The next slide over, we're going to those development waivers that we're requesting for this project specific to this project.
So one of the first waivers is the street frontage requiring certain improvements, and we're requesting a waiver on that to be more consistent with what is currently there on Northern Boulevard. The proposal is to provide a lot of these required improvements, but kind of group them closer together and rather than spaced them on the entire frontage. So that's our first waiver request. And this next one.
So you are at time.
How much more you got?
Well, we have 5 waivers. That was the first one. So
Let's get through the waivers and reassess. Any problem? Any problem, Martin? No.
thank you very much. The next waiver is we'll get through a couple of slides here, get to the next waiver. Keep going. Yep. So this is, I briefly talked about this, the access into the site code is for a double lane, 20-foot requirement. So it's kind of in conflict with the code, fire code, requiring a 26-foot wide access. And in order to get a City of Albany fire truck into the site, we need 26 foot. So that's what this waiver is about. And I'll turn this over to Rich for the streets building.
That part's actually state code. So switch to the next slide. That's the entrance. We are not showing the pedestrian entrance on Northern Boulevard. We feel that it should be in the courtyard area between the buildings for safety and security. It also is much more pedestrian friendly, to be honest, in that part. So we have a few other slides related to this. Yeah, if you go out on the street there right now, it's pretty fast traffic. It's not the safest to be out there. We also have a bit of grading there that we have to deal with. I go to the next slide. Let's see.
These are the alternatives that we consider in terms of the development, the overall development. So that should cover, that covers all of the future waivers.
I think there's a couple more, but I don't think we need to get into the reasoning and we just want to present them. So we just go over the remaining.
Okay, let's go on the next slide.
Next slide. All right, so these are also one of the alternatives.
So still the same slide. I think. Yeah, go to the next slide.
Okay, so I think this, we kind of wrapped up here, I think. For any major questions. So I think we hit all the big ones.
Thank you. Start with questions from members of the board first, and we'll go through questions and comments from audience participants, and then we'll listen to staff recommendations. Okay. Any questions?
I do. Mine is regarding the design of the buildings, because, you know, your design is sort of like goes up this way and then this way. So it looks like the apartments on this piece are all facing the street, which means, like you said earlier, a lot of traffic, a lot of noise, busy, you have a hospital. Can I ask why you guys designed it that way versus putting that part of the building on the back end, where there'd be less of that noise and less of that pollution hitting your residents?
That's about the second one.
Well, we did go through several concepts to get to this layout. One was a smaller lot and smaller individual buildings. I'm not sure how many stories, but there were several buildings on either side with a green space in the middle with a community building, and it's beyond me, but that was, I guess, determined not economically feasible, so we went back to a larger site. The prior one was included in the subdivision. So it went back to this larger site, and we went through different orientations of the building, and I think we ended up, I'm not 100%, but I think we ended up with this orientation because of the grades through the site. The site slopes from Northern Boulevard to the south east corner, and this tends to facilitate the grading and building construction without the use of a lot of site retaining walls.
So the short answer here is it was constructability from our perspective. And this is the best constructible way that we can find to orient buildings in order for it to be fully constructible in the way that it's designed currently.
So I guess my concern is a couple of things that you guys put in your presentation. Not just the street noise and pollution, but also safety. You really can't see in from what that looks like. So if anything's happening in this middle part or on the sides, you really can't see in, versus the other way was a lot more open. And if there's an emergency going on, a lot easier to get to. You're sort of locked in once you come in, and it feels like its own compound in a sense. I don't know if that's what the goal you guys are trying to achieve, or.
We've got 92 apartments that are looking in toward the parking lot.
Right, but it's all.
Pretty good natural surveillance.
Yeah, but like if there's issues for police or fire, they can't see in.
Well,
You know what I mean? Versus the other way, you can see in a little bit more.
my understanding is that the buildings will be staffed full-time for the management, and management is situated such in the buildings that they can see out through the main entrance into the courtyard. So I think that would address your concern.
Yeah, so that is how we typically mind our management office, but better than that, what I also will say is the way that we have central orientation of a lot of our cameras potentially will make sure that we're at least viewing things all around, and for every single conifer development, typically they are heavily monitored with cameras, lots of security, and definitely on-site staff to make sure that the people are in compliance with their neighbors and the surrounding neighborhood. That was one of our major goals in coming to the site specifically because of being aware of its prior use and reputation.
It's a residential building, 100% rent, there's no retail or.
That's correct.
Affordable housing.
Any additional questions?
And then if I ask a question on that,
Certainly.
was there any thought, or did you consider any commercial elements for the first floor? I mean, you are proposing 184 units, and then there's residential uses, single family and multifamily just around the block. Was there consideration given to that?
There was, for us, it's economics, really, honestly. We're a residential builder primarily. We don't do commercial, and we don't do that much commercial. But what I will say is typically in a development like this, based on the street frontage is, unless the street frontage was directly on the street, we have good walkable traffic or good foot traffic, we wouldn't want to bring in, especially in affordable housing developments, try to restrict them out outside. People that would come in on a visitor level to visit people and, buy things like that or retail basis, even though we're taking that in units. It becomes a little bit of a management, difficulty. Make sure things are really tightly managed, especially our populations that we'll be serving there.
So, to that point, was consideration given to where the tenants of this development would be going, either for food or for other amenities if there's none built on site?
Well, typically what we hope is that from an economic development perspective that supports anything local, any of the local amenities. And the idea is to make sure that there's 184 permanent residents on site, whereas previously before you had 102 units that were largely transit units coming in and out of that particular space. So now you've got 184 permanent households that will be supporting the economics of the neighborhood on a permanent basis and become permanently helpful members of society, we think, because now they have stable permanent housing.
Right, and then in terms of the amenities, I know there's some listed on, I forget if it's the first or second floor, and then there's the play area. Can you just briefly describe like what went into deciding how large those amenity sites would be and what they would entail?
Yeah, so typically what we do for all of our developments is we'll have a playground space that's for the very young children. We'll have a community room. The idea of the community room is that the residents would be able to have functions there, birthday parties, things of that nature. Typically, a lot of times our residents will even have sometimes even weddings there, quite frankly. So it helps to have that amenity space there and have it available for the residents so that they can use that to create a sense of community. And sometimes there's even actual, true internal community meetings in those spaces. As far as the outside spaces, landscape spaces, the idea there is that residents can enjoy some good natural vistas, good natural lights, good natural lighting, good, a lot of, it should give the area a certain level of character that we hope revivifies makes the area a lot more, beautiful and alive. It gives it a certain level of presence in that corner that it didn't have previously. So that's what we want to do for us in terms of amenities in these spaces. Another question.
Is most of the space around the buildings and grass, lawns that you're showing?
Those are all landscape spaces, yes.
Okay. What's the mix of units?
No, I can't remember that offhand. What our numbers were. But of course, Rich has all the numbers here. In one building, let's see, building A, we have 28 ones, 47 twos, 17 threes. So it's total 92. The second building, 29 ones. 20. That's fine. 29. So same thing. 29 ones, 47 twos, 19 threes. So okay.
Yeah. Have you guys? Sorry, I thought it was done, but looking at it, or I have more questions. What about people driving into and off of like the traffic? Because again, you can take a right turn in, not a problem, but if you're trying to take a left turn in, especially in that area, and I don't believe there's a light there. I think the light is right before there at the Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, we did. Okay. Your turn.
Yes, we have you.
Traffic's gonna be pretty easy. Turn in. There's a two-way left turn lane, basically a center turn lane that is only used for turning left, basically off of the road coming into here. So if you're southbound coming from the hospital, you'll get into that center lane. You'll be able to sit there and wait. You're not gonna hold up any traffic behind you. They'll be able to drive by you down to southbound, and you'll be able to turn left into here, no issues. We did do a traffic study. We did counts out there on the road. We estimated how much traffic from the project would be generated, sent it through this single driveway and up through the signalized intersection. We developed what I'll call a report card for intersections, which goes on level surface A down to F. F is bad, A is really great. The intersection right now is operating on level surface C, so it's right in the middle. We added in the traffic from our project, and it didn't change those levels by any measurable amount. So with and without this project, you're really not going to see much change out on the intersection or at the signal. Does that answer your question?
Maybe. The reason being is because I'm just trying to remember that intersection. I remember that intersection that the turn lane is at Albany Shaker and Northern Boulevard. You're in more. And the way that you have this has it in more, not at Albany Shaker. So I understand what you're saying about the curve, the turns and all that other stuff. But if you're going, and I don't do southbound, I do landmarks. So if you're going from the Kip Charter School or the Livingston Homes towards North Albany more, your turn lane is to the left. Same thing if you're going from the opposite way, your turn lane is to the right. So you have no real turn lane in front of your entrance. And that's the concern that I have.
I think it would be flip-flop. If you're coming from the KIPP school going north, going in this direction.
Your turn lane is to
You'll
the
make a-
left onto Albany Shaker to go up Albany Shaker path around Stewart's.
Correct.
Right, you're before that though. So that's what I'm saying,
Further.
if you're coming in that direction, it's not a problem because you're taking a right into your parking lot. I'm talking about if you're trying to take a left, there's no turn lane in that space into your parking lot.
There is.
There is?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't think so. I didn't think so. My mom lived around the corner for about 2 years, so I didn't think so.
Can you go back to the proposed site plan slides towards the beginning?
That turn lane that you're talking
I can show
about
you on my phone.
gives you a left-hand turn down Shaker Road towards Pearl Street. You're in more. You don't have a turn lane.
We're a couple hundred feet south of the traffic signal, and there's a
Right.
center turn lane to come into the site.
Can we go to the existing conditions slide? That's slide 2, I think. Or no, sorry, not slide 2. There's an existing.
Or even Google Maps.
Yeah, another.
Yeah.
Another slide, another one. The next slide, I think.
Another slide down. Keep going down. One more slide.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. So spin around. And that's kind of the northern side of the site. If you spin a little bit more to the right.
Okay, so there's that. Oh, I see what you mean. So if you turn it,
So the site driveway is behind us now.
yeah, you went the other way.
So if you're coming from the Stewart's and you're heading towards KIPP School, you'll go down another maybe 200 feet and you can kind of see the red sign. The red sign on the left-hand side of the road is basically the entrance to this project.
And you're keeping that entrance.
This entrance will go away, but where the red sign is,
So
that's where
further
the
down.
new driveway will go. So we'll get, this is perfect right here. This is the entrance.
Can you turn the other way, please?
There's two
Nope.
existing
Okay.
driveways that'll go
Look at
away.
me.
And then this sign essentially will be the new driveway coming in. So to the right, kind of behind the camera,
Is that something? Okay, I see what you're saying.
This will go.
so northbound,
I still see it.
okay, keep turning, please. Okay, now we're looking north towards Stewart's and Dunkin' Donuts and the hospital. If you're coming southbound, you'll pull into that center yellow lane and you'll make a left turn into the site.
Okay.
So that's what I was mentioning. You'll
It
set
would
there to
back
turn
up.
left in and you want to impede cars going southbound towards you.
So your left is covered and your right is just.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions from staff? No? All right, we do have comment from the public. First up, Helen Brooks, and the way we do this, everyone will come sit here, you all can return to your spot if there is. I don't think, because this is the first, we don't normally do rebuttal on the first one, this is comment, but if there's something you wanna follow up, we will. Helen Brooks, please come to the microphone.
Can we reverse the
Can we
order?
reverse the order?
Mr. Chairman, I would appreciate it.
So we have Dr. Eva Joseph first.
Yes. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Three, yes, I'm reminded of the rules. There's a 3-minute time constraint on public comments, and there might be follow-up questions from the board members and staff to completion of your comments.
Thanks for allowing me to go first. My name is Eva Joseph, and I reside at 14 Greenmore Court here in North Albany, approximately 250 feet from the proposed housing project number 00525 at 500 Northern Boulevard, Northgate Landing. I am the president of the Lofts at Brynmawr Condominium Association and representing all of the association members. A number of them are here this evening and will speak as well. This past week, we have taken time to carefully review the project narrative, the proposed building structure, and the site layout for this project, and are collectively opposed to it. We, as residents of this community, Northern Albany, are very familiar with the surrounding neighborhood's capacity of absorbing such a large number of low-income residents and families, and oppose it for the following reasons. One, while we would support mixed-income housing, we are strongly against a residential development that is primarily and solely for low income. Anything more than 25% creates an oversaturation of low-income needs, most especially when noting 184 1-, 2-, and 3-bedroom apartments without any capacity limits per apartment. A too large, low-income housing project with the potential for a very large influx of people living in these apartments, particularly the 3-bedroom apartments, with nowhere to go in the neighborhood. From the architectural drawing of the site plan, there does not appear to be meaningful outdoor space. We're concerned that there needs to be an adequate play area for children in more green space. Third, we note the significant number of parking spaces planned for the project, yet we question if this is environmentally wise, especially when there are many public bus routes in the area. Fourth, there is no retail shopping close by for residents. And while the proposal cites a grocery store 1 mile away, our estimate puts it at well over 2 miles away and not within walking distance. Fifth, we have concerns about the potential of mismanagement of the property once it is built, ranging from occupant screening and selection to daily upkeep. Last, the schools. As the former superintendent of the city school district of Albany and knowledgeable of the challenges that children from low income and educationally disadvantaged backgrounds present, though not necessarily synonymous, what they bring to schools, consideration must be given to the impact on the school district with increases in financial, human, and service resources necessary to accommodate an anticipated surge in enrollment in the surrounding schools. In summary, this project appears much more of an old-fashioned and somewhat negative approach to public subsidized housing, particularly the overly large dorm-style boxy design. Certainly, such urban projects have evolved considerably more over the last half of a century than what has been proposed here. There is much new, successful, and thriving upscale housing construction in the Greater Capital District that is reinvested in the diverse cities in the capital region. This could still be accomplished here too, with a well-planned project that helps establish an optimum mix and balance of residents with incomes who would also be able to contribute to the city of Albany. Once again, we oppose project number 00525 in its present form. We submit that the needs of families and the community would be better served by an investment in planning for a much more modern and eco-friendly mixed-use development that could be greatly enjoyed and viable for high, middle, and low-income families. Thank you for your consideration.
Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Mark Egan?
That's no.
Now, I thought you wanted to switch like for real, go fast. Okay.
Yeah, this works because I will simply say what Eva said. But I do have some other thoughts. Now I want to be clear.
this isn't an example of NIMBY, not in my backyard, but rather an assertion that my backyard is full. The only reason Northern Boulevard will not become another Central Avenue, you know, a corridor where so many things are cited that it has really destroyed those neighborhoods that are budded, is because there's a bridge that separates this proposed project from the schools. You have KIPP Tech Valley over there, but there's a big bridge that separates it. But in a 1 mile radius, a square mile, you're going to have this project. It's my understanding there'll be a disability services offered in the project. You have the hospital, which used to be Albany Memorial, but now it is Samaritan. It is an emergency triage. So you do not stay at that hospital for more than 24 hours. So it's very transient. Then you have right across, you have the Perini Assisted Living Development. And then you have a few feet down, Hudson Park Rehabilitation and Nursing Services, just in that area. So I guess the question becomes, when is enough enough? You alluded to what you described the drawings as a compound, and that's exactly what we see. It's a compound, you can't see in. That certainly is not secure. And I could be wrong, but when we were looking at what the size of the apartments could be, they were very small, almost like a dorm size. So, you know, my other contention is that if you're going to do it right. You don't just do any old thing because it's low income. I don't know what the size of the apartments are, but we calculated 270 square feet for, I guess, the 1 bedrooms and going up. That's very small. Someone mentioned here how 750 square feet was small. So I don't know what the sizes are, but we can do better. Let's put it that way. We can do better. Putting our low income residents just anywhere in a compound, I don't think it serves them well. And then what you're going to do is you're going to immediately put 400 people in a food desert. There is no grocery store. Stewart's becomes their grocery store, which is not fair. Thank you.
Thank you. What more are we going into? Please introduce yourself and state your address for the record.
Dr. Bob Wishnow, 14 Bridmore Court, Albany. Okay. I'm going to give a little historical perspective.
Don't forget you have 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Right.
Wait. I moved to Albany 50 years ago. Thought I'd be here a year. It's 50 years later this week. When I moved to Albany, I invested in the city. I bought a property and I had my office there for 35 years on South Lake Avenue. Thinking 35 years later it would be part of my retirement project. Couldn't sell that building. The city was in decline. I ended up donating that building to the State University. I bought a house on Fairlawn Avenue off of Western Avenue. Kept that house for a number of years, about 10 years, and couldn't sell that house. The area was in a state of decline. Kept it for a year. Dedicated to still wanting to live in the city of Albany, I moved to Bryn Mawr Court, a new development in a nice part of the neighborhood, but wanting to stay in the city, hoping, give it one more chance, see what was going on in that neighborhood with Bishopsgate, Loudon Plaza, and easy access, so we moved there. So now I'm kind of distressed seeing that the average home in my community, 250 feet away from low-income housing, and Bishopsgate and the areas around there, the average home is somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 plus. So it's kind of distressing that after my commitment to stay in Albany and watch the city improve and watch the tax base improve, and seeing what's going on all over Albany, if you look at the developments on New Scotland Avenue, Lower New Scotland, Upper New Scotland, you look at the Tobin project, you look at the Broadway Pearl Street corridor, in terms of that district. All of those projects right now are all what you call market rate apartments, built by local people, the Jankows, the Nigros, the Masteries, the Rosenblums, people investing in the city in market rate apartments that are just consistently being filled. Upper New Scotland, St. Peter's Hospital, the middle of Albany, around where the old bowling alley used to be, the Janko developments, all being built with market rate, private money, for profit, people building and investing in the city. And there's no reason why to take a prime piece of property that's closer to Manans, Loudonville, all the a beautiful country club and the resources, Loudon Plaza. People put millions of dollars into redeveloping Loudon Plaza to now put a low-income Section 8 housing in a part of the city that's finally being redeveloped. If you go down that hill and you're on the warehouse district, it's beautiful down there. It's coming back. Our neighborhood coming back. Loudon Plaza was in decline. It's all coming back. So that's my concern, not to allow low-income housing in an area that's increasing the tax rate. Thank you.
You. Any questions, staff or board? Seeing none?
Yeah, I got one more.
Well, we have one more.
They took you off.
I know, exactly. They tried. Good evening, everybody. I'm Mark Egan. I live at 3 Bryn Mawr Court. And really, most of my neighbors really talked about, my concerns as well. You often hear the expression Albany for all. And this project isn't for all. It's only for low income. And I think that Eva talked about in her comments, I think many of us would support to have some subsidized housing as part of the project, but it shouldn't be the project. And whatever the project, if there's other plans, you can just look at those maps. The project is way too big for that site. You look at the amount of grass that you saw there was very little. So I would encourage the board to look and say, if we want to do something that works long-term for the city, that's good for our tax base, it also protects the tax base of neighbors, and to build a neighborhood where you have folks from all different means that live together as part of a community. So as presented, I strongly oppose this project. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Councilmember Kelly Kimbrough. 30 seconds.
You have 6 minutes as you represent a wider portion of the neighborhood. So,
Okay, thank you. So I won't take up that much time. Just want to start by saying the fourth ward consists of some of the wealthiest folks in the city and some of the poorest. I represent them all. I'm less fearful of this project than some of the folks that I represent. Affordable housing development is tough. It's hard to come by. We have folks making suggestions about developers. I'd love to see mixed use, mixed income storefronts on the bottom. That development, that's not what's good for us. It's something different from that. We need affordable housing. Affordable housing doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. It doesn't mean people are bad or going to be bad and they're going to be negative consequences. With that being said, I know this is the beginning of this process. And I first heard of this project, I don't know, June of last year, talked with a different project manager. We started talking. I wanted to get the community involved. I wanted to have conversations with the community up the hill, the community down the hill. We didn't get to do that. The one project developer disappeared. We have a new one, Walmart. He's very nice, decent guy. We're kind of doing things backward or out of the order that I wanted to do it. I wanted to have these conversations so we can, duke it out, if you will, over number of units and all this other stuff, but we didn't get there. We're where we're at right now. But I still hope to have a conversation with the community. We are planning a North Albany meeting on the 13th of June
in which North Albany's neighborhood association will be there, and I hopefully can get the Bishopsgate Shaker Park neighbors down there also to have a discussion with the developer. Unfortunately, looking at the way this stuff is laid out, we're at a stage where you don't really get to change much because it's all laid out, but I'm hopeful that we can have some discussions and change some things, because I understand, the folks that are here, that I represent their fears. I understand it. I'm at 80 Van Rensselaer Boulevard, just the other side of the hospital. I've been in my house for 27 years, so I've seen the neighborhood ebb and flow, things come and go, the goods and the bads of it all. So my house value's gone up, down, up, just like we're all dealing with. But we need affordable housing. There's a need. I have to represent people that have and people that have not. So that's what I'm trying to do here. And I wish we could have had this conversation a lot sooner, but we're where we're at. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilmember. I don't want to deprive anyone from speaking tonight. Spend some time on this one. Might as well spend the time on this one. Are there any other comments from the public for this? This is, again, just the first appearance. There's no recommended action. However, I think that the general theme of the council members' remarks should be just by the groups. We've seen this many a time. This is the work of the planning board and the planning department to navigate this, but the first thing that we know is that we never really get to a good result if the parties are not communicating and agreeing with each other. So I hope the next time this comes back, we'll be able to say that y'all had discussions and look forward to that. Is there any other business before the board? No? Make sure council is in order. All right, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Is it moved and properly second, all in favor? Those opposed? Meeting adjourned. 42. Mark. All the way to 7 o'clock, I didn't get that one. Damn.